I don't know how the critique will go in terms of putting the videos back on this capture, but at least you'll have some feedback then and we'll chat about it. So something I would challenge you to do right now is when we look at a piece or when we look at these pieces up here, look for things you like, look for things you don't like, look for things that feel right to you, look for things that feel wrong to you, and then take it that next step further, which is why? Like, what is it that, what piece of information can I give this person that is helpful? Pixar actually doesn't necessarily use the word critique. They use it, they call it plussing. Like, what can you do when you look at a person's work? Like, you should just assume that person put a lot of effort into it, right? Which I know isn't always the case in some of your classes. You may have classes with people who are like, wow, did you even try on this, whatever. But you should, I don't actually think that's the truth about this class at all. I think everybody here is working hard at this. So when you look at it, you see that people put effort into it. They made a lot of right decisions. What can you do to make it more right? What can you do to make it even better, right? So things that are helpful there is like pointing out things that were successful because that was an attempt to communicate. Somebody's like, I wanted my character to look surprised. Was that successful? And if you tell them, oh, I like that pose, that character really looks surprised, then that lets them know they did something right. The reason it looks surprised is by how much they exaggerated when they went back, or the drag on their head, or whatever, right? Now, I thought until last class period that it went without saying that just being rude about somebody's work and being like, that looks terrible, or this is like, you should throw this away, like whatever. Like, that is the opposite of helpful, right? That is actually, I know people who acted that way in a studio, and they can't get hired now, like, because they will never get a good reference. That is not a helpful person. That's a snide person. Like, that's somebody who is intentionally giving critique for the wrong reasons. So I didn't think that was an issue, but a couple of comments came out that I just thought were completely unhelpful in some people's work. So that usually doesn't happen out loud, right? Like, because like, you don't want to be that person who said that, but apparently when we went anonymous on this, it can. So just think about that. Like, when we watch these, like, this is how I always like to think of critique is if Katie came to me and said, hey, I got this opportunity for a job next week, right? They're going to pay me $80,000 a year to do this job. And all they want to see is one piece of my animation to see if I'm capable of doing this job. Will you look at this animation and tell me if it, like, help me make it better so I can get this $80,000 a year job, right? If I looked at it and saw problems with it and didn't say, oh, maybe you should make the weight better, if I didn't give her good feedback there, then I would just be like a bad person. Like, that's just not a good way to live your life, is to like, so like, that's what we're doing here, right? Someday you are all going to take this work, or maybe not this work, but the work that derives from the things you're getting here. You're going to take that and you're going to apply to a job, right? And the comments that we get here are part of what makes you better at this, makes you good at this, right? And so, like, let's think about that. Back to that, I actually just hate one by one critiques. Like, it's hard on me, it's hard on the student, it's hard on it doesn't ever feel helpful, and it feels rushed because we either take the entire class to devote to this one project critique, or we rush through them, and that means you end up having to like try to come up with something good to say. So let's watch them and kind of enjoy this instead. Let's watch through them and let's talk about things that are going right, things that are going wrong. Try to find consistent elements or things that maybe just a specific thing. Maybe we see one, it's like, oh, that moved a little fast. Could you bring that one back up and we can make a note about that, right? And we'll just spend a little bit of time doing that today. And then we'll go on to what I think you're actually going to really enjoy, which is our next few projects, or our next few assignments. So we are really, really close to kicking off our final. We have one more exercise before that. I know the schedule shows that differently. Basically, to give you more final time, I'm going to combine the last two projects. And that way you can get started now on the entire thing. Having said that, let's go ahead and drag these into this S player and just watch through them. Did I open that?
I'm about to put mine in.
Okay, if you're dropping it in, no, you're cool. Let's drop that in there real quick. Okay. Huh? Yeah, we don't know exactly what they are yet. We always do half of Thanksgiving with my wife's family and half of Thanksgiving with my mom and dad, which usually means we drive for 3 hours on Thanksgiving. So we eat a lot of turkey and then get in a car. And then we eat a lot of turkey. So, how many of you all? How many of you like hang around here for Thanksgiving? Anybody?
Live here.
You live here. So like, I know some people, and I've thought about that before. Like some students are like, my family's in Chicago. That's too far away for me to drive. So I'm always curious how many people are just kind of chilling here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drag these to the desktop. They'll go a little faster that way. Oh, look at all of them. That's interesting. None of these have previews. Okay, let's see what happens if I drag them into the thing. Here we go. Okay, seems to be working. Okay, here we go. First time through, let's just enjoy them. Anybody need sound? Need sound? I don't know how loud the sound is. I think we have sound. I guess we will find out together. Here we Okay, here we go. Yeah. That was cool. Let's give yourselves that. Yeah, that was fun. All right, cool. So, what's your thoughts? Like, what's some things that stuck out for you? Like, do you have one right now? I mean, obviously the last one. Do you have one from somewhere in there that you were that caught your eye and you're like, oh, that one was neat, or that one was like, what was one? Let me get the chat. Yeah.
I like yours. This is really good. Like how it entered in from the side and kind of like had like yeah, just like that's like the best part. Like that
So
looks
that
like
little-
something I would see in an actual like movie or something.
That little eye dart, right?
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting to think about when we're watching these is we were all given the same like rough assignment, right? And everybody interpreted it a different way. So you all have a little bit of a different personality that you put into the character and made different decisions for that character. So like I think this one's interesting because you like when we watch this, we are using our time as human beings that we've existed, right? We've accumulated all of these cues, right, that we can see in the way a person acts and what that might mean, like our emotional, or what's it called, our emotional IQ or whatever, like you can perceive what somebody's emotions are just by the way that they act, right? And so this has a lot of interesting little ones, like that eye dart at the beginning. Like, what does that say to you? What do you think that means? Like,
To me, it makes it feel like the camera's an entity and it sees the camera.
yeah, see that. Why dart around? Why not just stare at us?
Because the camera's pointed at the cube and not at him, so he's trying to figure out why is it at the cube.
So we're getting some like level of comparison in here, and we could interpret that in a few ways, right? Yeah, what are you gonna say?
I'll say I completely interpreted it a different way. I took it as he knows the camera's there and he's like acting like, okay guys, look at me get to the cube and oh, I'm so scared.
Yeah, like it's got some stuff in there of like without looking at the cube, his eye kind of darts over to it. Or I say he, like forgive me on that one. I know I'm gonna slip up on it like a dozen times. But the eye dart kind of darts over to the cube and back to the camera, and it's like even though there's this mysterious thing we're looking at, Hobo is like still most conscious of the camera, right? So like I'm kind of with you. I interpret it as like I'm going to get up here in front of this and do something silly. Oh, what's the silly thing I did? Like it's got like a America's Funniest Home Videos or like YouTube like a staged YouTube blooper like feel to it. Was that kind of what you were going for?
It was just more of the bring the focus with the eye, like the eye looking at the cube was the whole main idea. But I'm open to the interpretations.
So that's what. Yeah, let's kind of watch it. So you're going for like, hey, what are you looking at? Oh,
yeah,
that thing.
Especially whenever he's like whenever he finishes the jump, he like looks back at the camera. So it's kind of like look with me per se, like if that makes sense.
Okay, let's watch it one more time and see. Okay. That's kind of neat. So, since we took a minute or two to examine this one on why we liked it, let's take a minute or two to examine this on how we can make it better. So, like, this is an interesting one. A lot of people kind of called this one out. Sorry. But like, I think that what we're going to get is a couple of people are going to point out stuff that you may be able to apply to your own. So what's some things in this one that you think that you can do to plus it? Yeah.
It's not really having to do, I guess, with the character itself, but more so like if something actually happened with the box to make him think, because otherwise he's just kind of staring at it.
And I think that's actually why I was reading it as a staged reaction, is because like it felt overacted for nothing to respond to. Yeah, so even just like a little wiggle to it or something like that. So yeah, like any other comments on things?
I think the follow through on the jump, I'll like watch it again, but like once he like lands, he just kind of stops. Then it could like add like a follow through maybe where he goes down and then comes back up.
Mhm.
Just to like I don't know, I'm watching it, but it seemed like he just kind of like was there. Okay, there was a little bit of it, but
You can do that, or because it's kind of age shaped, you can almost make it like waddle a little bit.
yeah.
Because he seems a little bit firmer than some of the Squish Boys. So you can almost make him like an egg and just waddle, which would be a fun little effect if they're giving more like firmness.
Especially since he just like at the end he just kind of like dissolves. I think it's like weird seeing him go from like being very firm to like just like liquid.
So I think one of the things too that kind of strikes me in this one is the character's arc as it comes in on that landing. It feels like it's going sideways and then down, and so I just sort of play around with that arc. Because I think that maybe that's some of it too, is maybe the reaction, the overlapping action from that squash is happening in a different direction than we would expect because of the frames before it. So I think that what you all are bringing up on this one, though, is probably applicable to several of them, which is occasionally you'll see a character that when it lands, it doesn't feel like that energy of all the character like moving down, like it went anywhere, right? Like they just stop, right? And you're like, no, we gotta absorb that and feel like there's a level of like settle from that physical action that just happened, right? What's another one that you all kind of spotted that maybe caught your attention? Yeah.
One of the cardboard box and the spider.
Cardboard. Was that you? Wait. Okay. I can't remember if that was your Tanner. Okay. Where am I at?
I like how it wasn't just fear, it was pure panic, which I thought was a very interesting take on it.
Yeah. So something I think is interesting on this one is, so we talked about like, was it see, think, do, like acting is reacting, right? And one of the ways you can show in your character that the character actually has a brain, the character actually has it doesn't, but that you want it to seem like it has a brain, it's making decisions, it's making reactions by itself, is a change of emotion. And you did this really well in the space of just a few frames. So watch right here from looking into the box. That pose, like how would you read that pose or that frame?
Still kind of curious.
Curious, right? Like it's curious, it's like inquisitive, right? And we're getting a lot of that from the leaning in. We're getting that from the eyebrow. We're getting it a little bit from the angle. Like anybody ever had like a puppy or a dog that just does this? And when it looks at you, and you're like, what is it? Like I don't know if that's the dog being curious or not, but just that head angle, like just having a character that slightly tilts their head to one side, like goes, oh, they're curious about something, right? And so something about that angle on this reads as curious to me. And we go from that to completely terrified in under a second, right? So if we watch this happen, like that, like still like rigid, like, and we've all kind of felt that, right? That you get like scared by something and you just stiffen up, and you exaggerated that by holding it longer, right? Like you hit that still, and then you have them be still for like maybe too long if it were realistic, right? But you're going for that exaggeration, right? So again, exaggeration isn't making it like faster; it's making it more clear that that's the emotion you're trying to show. And just like making sure that we read that terrified pose is really important to that. Now you get that like wobble that's happening in there, I think you could probably get a little bit, make that a little faster, and it would read, like right now it's reading as like a jiggle when it's straight. It would make
I was
that
trying to do more of a shape, but
yeah, I think it would have a little bit more noise, and like the curve right now is probably like, it's the right amount, but the curves, like the width is too far apart. Like it's making it a little bit more jagged. So, cool. Other pieces that kind of caught your attention?
the one where the camera was actually different, and it's like the eye, whenever it was looking at the box, the reflection of the box.
So that was like I think there was more than one cut on that. Do you remember or like it was multiple camera cuts? Is that one yours? Okay, Maggie. I'm not seeing it. Huh? Oh, okay. That's neat. So that one is good. I think that you do something really cool here that we've been talking about, which you just spend like the beginning part of this animation letting your character hit like 3 different curious poses, right? Like they're all like, what is this thing? Should I go up to that thing? Like, and it's like you can almost feel like the character's mind like going step by step through a series of like slightly similar emotions, right? And the other thing I think you do really well in this one is you play with timing really well. So let's watch it again. So there's a lot of buildup to this one little thing right there, right? Like basically you have like 10 seconds of anticipation for like 3 frames of motion that triggers everything, right? And if we watch this, like we are like getting like hopefully like kind of getting tense about it too, like what's going to happen, it's getting closer. And so I think that's a lot of what's going on here. When we talk about anticipation, like we were all watching it when the box moved, right? And like you build up to that. What's some things on this one that maybe could be plussed a little bit? Yeah.
I think the one thing is if you can like scroll back
But-
a little
but
bit,
again-
it's just the transition between the 2 shots. I would just get it, especially with the second camera shot to the third one, like he stops his motion and then he starts moving in the third shot. I would just move to that third shot a little bit sooner so that motion like closer and
So it doesn't go completely still.
stop and then like move. Other than that,
So we call that continuity. Like if the character isn't moving in one shot and then we cut to another area, another camera, and the character's already moving, it feels like we broke continuity there. Like we must have a skip in time or something. So yeah, I can see that. Somebody else had their hand up. Yeah.
Sorry, what I was going to say is, with the last frame, when the box moves and it jumps back, it seems like that reaction is ever so slightly too slow. So maybe just moving it up by like a frame or 2 would help.
Too slow or too late? Like it happens.
But too late.
Too late. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because if the box moves and then like just it seems like his reaction to me. If that makes any sense.
I don't know. I think it could be read in a couple of ways. Like if it were, it doesn't feel like drastically too late to me, but I could see it like pull it 1 frame and see if that makes it better. The one little note I would say, and again, we're kind of calling a few out individually just to get some notes. And I think this is one that other people may be able to take something away from. Is that we talk about moving holds, like your character hits a pose, and you want that pose to read, right? You want and you have a lot of great poses at the beginning of this, right, where the character like I like that one, right? Like it kind of does this like it's looking forward and then kind of goes back to this like skeptical, right? But when you hit those poses, you need it to hit that pose, but not like completely freeze, right? And there's a couple spots where it feels like it freezes just a little too much. And so really the way you do that is in the graph editor, if you see anything that goes perfectly flat, like you have 2 tangents and it makes a perfectly flat line where the pose stops, just grab one of them and move it usually down to ease into it, or grab the second one and move it up to ease into it. And what that'll do is your character will get into like 98, 95% of that pose and sort of ease into that last 5%, right? And so it's still close enough to that same pose that we will read that pose, but it never feels like the character completely dies, like completely stops moving. And so you'll see it kind of in this next one. But I love the little eye blink that happens on this, like that one there. Like just that like so another thing we talk about when we talk about appeal, right? It is giving us something to look at. And it's like I think when we hear appeal, we're like, oh, we have to make it interesting or funny or whatever. It's really, I mean, like you can have a textural appeal to the motion, right? Because just that 2 little, like keeps us looking at it, keeps it appealing or fun to watch, right? So finding little things like that, that's what secondary action and appeal are for. So, okay. Anybody think of another one you saw that kind of caught your attention? I want to pull up yours, Hayden, just because I want to watch it one more time. Because I'm curious about this one. Everybody. So I think everybody laughs at that one because of Gurr and all of that. But you do some pretty cool stuff there too, like which is very similar to what Katie had. The character jumps back, goes kind of like scared, and then you have this like slow eye over to the camera, right? I feel like it's a little too smooth. You can make it a little bit more of a dart over to the camera, but there's some funny stuff in there that's going on. I bring this one up. I saw something the other day that was, and actually, I don't know if anybody uses Facebook anymore. I actually shared it on there, but there's a website called Cartoon Brew that shares different animation related stuff. And they had one about how to make a strong demo reel. And what they said is really strong performance ideas will sometimes overshadow like polish. So like if you have a really good performance, even if there's a couple little hitches in it, that shows you can get a really good performance out of something, right? So a strong idea, I bring that up because like your first idea is usually not your strongest, right? Like it's usually the same everybody else's first idea too, right? It's their first. And so exhausting all of your options usually means it forces you to be creative, right? If you say, I'm going to come up with 20 different ideas for this performance, right? You never know. The first one you come up with may still be the best one, but in most cases it's going to be like number 7 or something like that. It's when you've already gone through all the ideas that everybody else would have had as a knee-jerk reaction, and you come up with something that's a different performance than the audience expects, right? Part of this is in humor, right? If we think about humor, our humor is probably a little more advanced, but if you try to tell a joke to a 5-year-old, right? Like 5-year-olds just laugh at what is unexpected, right? If you like try it, just like go out and try it. Like try to talk to a 5-year-old and be like knock knock, and they'll be like, who's there? And be like, hippopotamus green, and they'll go because they're kids and you said something they didn't expect you to say. And really that's all humor is. It's like you set somebody up for one reaction and you change it just enough for them to not expect it. And kids just they're stupid, so they don't expect anything. So, like they haven't learned it yet, right? They haven't learned to expect certain things. So really all you're gonna do is say some word they don't expect and they'll find it funny. That's all that's happening in animation too, right? You set up this anticipation, and then the payoff has to be gratifying to our expectations, right? It has to both be like a good answer and slightly unexpected, right? The phrase that they use in writing is surprising yet inevitable, right? Okay, so let's try this one more time. We're going to watch through it this time. I want you to look for things that take you out of the animation, right? So hopefully what's happening when you start watching an animation, you fall into it and you're like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. How's he going to react to the box, right? And you've all probably experienced this in watching a movie, right? You're into the movie and then something happens that you just don't believe, right? Like, oh, that doesn't make sense. And then you are suddenly taken out of the movie. You're like, wait, that doesn't. And then you like start Googling to see if that's real. Like, it's breaking that suspension of disbelief, right? We are in a state of hypnosis watching this. We've all let our guard down. Let's enjoy this thing that we all can agree is not real, but we're going to enjoy it anyway. And if anything happens in this to sort of break that suspension of disbelief, we need to find those, because those are the things that will cause your audience to stop believing that this is a living creature, right? So anything from, I don't think that's how the character would have reacted to that, or I don't think this is, I'm not understanding that emotion or that facial expression, or that motion is too slow or at the wrong angle, so it doesn't feel physically accurate. Those are things that like your subconscious or even your conscious will catch and be like, oh yeah, this is an animation, right? So let's look for those things, the things that would take us out of this, right? So we'll start again at the beginning and just kind of put them in your back pocket until we're done. And we'll pull up a few of them to see, because these are the things that are usually relatively easy fixes, right? That motion is a little too fast or that motion is a little too slow. The animator can take that back and fix that pretty easily. So let's go ahead and watch through these. It's doing that thing again. Actually, I think we were on the last one anyway, weren't we? Wait, where'd we go? Let's do one more time. Okay. So what's some stuff you noticed? I mean, you don't have to call them out specifically, but you can if you want to. Like, what were some little things about this that kind of caught your attention? Yeah, go ahead. I didn't notice the hair.
Oh, okay. Some of these, when they're going through different poses or expressions, they the form itself is obviously really moldable and can move around in a lot of ways. But some of them feel like they gain too much mass for what they have on them, and it kind of overflows in a way that doesn't look right.
Okay. So trying to retain the same amount of volume and mass in the character. It's very easy to go overboard on that and take it. And animators would call that off model. Like you went off model to where it's not practical or believable. So, sorry, yes.
What I was going to say was, I noticed with some of the jumps, it felt like the weight wasn't distributed right. So it would go up, but when gravity was going down, the blob mass would also go down. And that would always just throw me off.
Yeah, I think that this one's harder than it might look, because for this character to jump, we needed to squash it down, but then the head had to kind of go up first and pull that bottom part of the body up. And then once gravity started taking a hold, it would look like the bottom part of the body would start to pull down first or pull the head behind it. And so on top of all of that, the overall character's arc should still pretty much be the same as a bouncing ball, right? There's a reason we kind of start with that, is that breaking of the tangents at the beginning and the end need to still be there. I saw a few where it feels like the character kind of floats down to the ground, and a few maybe where the character pops up in the air just a little too fast. Like they go from on the ground to completely up in the air over 2 frames instead of maybe 3 or 4 or something like that. And so like the amount you break your tangents or not breaking your tangents at all can have a part of that. Was that kind of what you were saying too, or are you saying more like?
It was more about like the what's it called in the middle?
Like the little deformer one? Like
Yeah,
the
the little deformer in the middle. I really didn't move anything. So when the weight was coming down, there was still all that mass in the center, but none of it was coming down with it. So it looked like gravity just wasn't working with the log mass.
Yeah, I think I can see what you're saying. Like the gravity is pulling on all of the character evenly and at the same time instead of getting like some of that built-in overlapping action in the volume. Yeah. One of the things I like to do on this one, and I probably should have like kind of gone over this, is like if you were going to draw this character, let me try this really quick with the snipping tool so I can show you that. If you were going to draw this character, actually let's go back here. That way, let's pick one of these and look at it. So Maggie, I'm going to use yours for a second here. If you were going to draw this, like, you could try to draw it all in one quick motion, right? With like, like this shape, like this, or whatever, right? I know I'm trying to draw with the mouse. Forgive me. But really, what we actually have here is a bunch of different volumes, right? We kind of have this, like, this bottom part and this top part up here, and then whatever's happening in the middle, right? If our character is squashing, then we kind of get this bulge in the middle. And if it's stretching, we may get like this sort of this stretchy shape in the middle, right? But if we think about those as two separate masses, we can animate them separately and get that feeling of lead and follow and overlapping action with that. And I think what's happening is like there are times when it feels like that mass is all just moving as one piece, and just breaking that up a little bit with some more dynamic poses would probably help. So, other things y'all noticed in this one? Or not on this one, but on this time around? Good things, bad things? Yes?
One thing I noticed that on some of them, the jumps seemed to not conserve the forward momentum very well. Like it reached the apex and then almost fall below the apex.
Yeah, I think figuring out that like a clean arc for that jump that is believable. And sometimes you'll see that like your character will jump too far forward and then go straight down. And then sometimes when they hit the ground, if they're traveling forward and then hit the ground, but don't feel like any of that forward momentum follows through, then that can feel kind of off. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah. Other comments? Things you noticed?
Sometimes I think when it blinks or something, it might be too slow, and like realistically, if we blink fairly fast, we don't miss anything.
Yeah.
And especially, I guess, if you're curious about something, maybe you really want them like to be open, or if they blink, it's just like quickly clear, like your eyes are like, maybe I'm not seeing it right, or sometimes you blink quickly.
So I think you're right. I think the eye has a lot of fast motion in it. A blink usually takes about 2 frames to go closed, right? It usually stays closed for about 2 frames, and then 2 to 3 frames to open back up again. So a total of 5 frames. So sometimes the blink is like if it's too fast or if it's really slow, like they can feel off. Eye darts are the other way. Like a couple people have their characters like eye kind of looking around, but if it goes like really slow over to a new aim, then it reads as like, that just doesn't feel accurate, right? Like if I were going to go from looking at you to looking over here, right, it wouldn't just be like this slow drift, it would be like a series of darts. It'd be like dart, 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 right? Like it's like these really quick twitchy motions, right? And so yeah, the eyes have a lot of fast motion going on in there. And some of it felt a little like squishy, a little too soft. So. Other things you noticed? So one of the things I'm going to talk about, we're going to go over today in class, which is strong pose. And I think that there are some of the things you'll take away from this lecture that you could go back and apply to this. So particularly line of action. Line of action is sort of the line that you could draw all the way through it. We're looking right now at this one, and it has an appealing, like, curved line of action. If your character is like just straight up and down, that's kind of dull to look at. Just like getting like some angle to some stuff, some curves and stuff, is just a little bit more appealing to look at. And I think another thing I was kind of noticing is that there's a few spots where like stuff feels a little twitchy, and so that's usually just more time in the graphic. So those are some of the things. Y'all want to watch it one more time? So one of the things I will say is if you have specific questions about your own, now is a good time to bring those up. Right? I know that sounds like I'm saying throw yourself under the bus, right? Like, but when you like this is how you get feedback, and it's a really hard thing for us to break that. Like we tie our self-worth to these pieces. You put a lot of time in it, and if somebody says that doesn't look right, like that feels like a personal insult. It shouldn't be. And one of the ways, because that's that relationship we have with our art, sometimes we don't want to show people a piece and ask for feedback until the very end, right? So something I would ask you to get like actively to try to do is on the next few projects, stop yourself while you're working on something. If you're fighting with something, just find another person, like anybody in this room will work, and say, hey, would you watch this and give me some feedback? That is really hard to learn to do. And plenty of professionals have problems with that as well. But it can save you a lot of time. This is not probably, this is all looking really good to me. Like, there's a lot of good stuff in here. But I'm sure that there are things that can be improved on every one of them. So if you have like a concern about yours, like is this reading, I can't tell, like it's fine to say, hey, can somebody give me some feedback on that part, right? And we can do that now, we can do that whatever. I don't want to make you do that, but if somebody's interested in that, let's kind of talk about that after this pass through. So, were you saying something?
I had something that I did want to kind of ask about.
So let's go ahead and try that really quick then before we go to the next one, or before we go through it. So, Kitty? So yeah, what's the...
Okay, so towards the end, you can see like a lot of the clipping with the spider. I know it's because of the way it's turning and stuff, but for his eye, you can see it clip in. And I tried everything with messing with the face UI, like the bulge and the scale and everything, but I could not get that clipping to stop happening. So like
right there?
Like yeah, you see it worse like as it goes on, but I was having the worst time trying to fix that.
I saw that the first time I watched it. I think also this is another thing, like just pausing right here, the reflection, like sort of washing out the eyeball and stuff. Some of this stuff you may not even notice until after you render it. I noticed it. If there's not a way on the rig to fix it, you remember when we did blend shapes? So there's something we call a corrective blend shape, which is you would basically just make a new blend shape for this character in the shape editor, and when it's in this pose, you would go in there and pull out those vertices and basically manipulate the model to where that's not happening anymore, and then just animate that blend shape on and off when you need it. Right? We see that a lot of times when stuff blows through another thing, or like if I really needed to show like two pieces of skin or whatever pushing against each other, you can just sort of turn that on as a corrective piece. That'll probably be the extreme workaround. How many of you noticed it then? I think that's probably more of the question. Like was there another thing you were asking about? Yeah, it kind of. I noticed it. It wasn't something that like I wasn't really thinking too much about modeling at that point, and I kind of thought of that as like a model issue. We could work with the model to get that fixed. But yeah, I think that it's noticeable before you would put it in some form of reel or show off of a piece. That'd be something to fix. But I think also seeing stuff like the reflection covering up the eye there is something else to play with and see. Maybe you turn down the spec, or maybe you just render a few frames and composite that part
I
out.
just love the default lighting, and I didn't even see this, like you said, until after it was right there. By that as, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons, like, a lot of times in animation, your first render isn't your final render, right? And that sucks because rendering takes so long. Sometimes you can go through and render like 15 frames from the whole thing and look at it and see if that looks good. Yeah. I think to me the thing that kind of strikes me is if you get a little bit more deformation on that spider, even if it just kind of constantly stays sort of clutched to the head without getting much motion on it, that kind of struck me as like the aluminum spider on the head thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things y'all noticed on this one? Let's watch it one more time since you're kind of asking. So something I will mention on this one as well, and I think it's probably worth for a lot of people. We talked about on Maggie's, like she was hitting a pose and then it was kind of freezing a little bit. Sort of the opposite end of that spectrum is not holding on a pose long enough, and it just feels like it just goes right past it. And so we kind of see this on the eye darts a little bit, like the eye is constantly moving. I think just having a pose where it like freezes, even just for like 5 frames before going to the next one, like that's that moving hold we're looking for. And I feel like there's a little bit going on that in the body too. I see that in a few people's where you may work really hard on this one pose, like the audience needs a chance to see that. Sometimes if we just have that one keyframe of it, it'll get to that pose and then immediately go to the next one and it doesn't read. So I think we maybe play around with that a little bit as well. So let me watch that one more time so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Yeah, see how the eyes like kind of move. So, anybody else wanting like some individual feedback on theirs? Camera. Where am I not seeing yours, camera? Oh, there it is. I was like, why can't I find it? Okay. Okay. So what do y'all think of that one? Any specific questions you have on it? Or?
I don't know, there's just something about it that I don't like, and I've spent a lot of time on it trying to fix it, and like go back, and then when I finish with that, go back, and like I was in the graph editor a lot, just like tweaking like the curves and stuff, and I don't know, it's just like, it doesn't feel natural to me.
I feel like it's just a little bit stiff, is what it is, but
Yeah, let's watch it one more time with those comments in mind and see if we can figure out what it is that. So like the first jump, you're saying like it's just kind of it's a jump without a reason.
Like Patrick's car. He's just kind of like staring up and not really paying attention.
Yeah, I was kind of going for like, he wasn't like, he didn't see the cube until he was like right in front of it, but I think it kind of like, that concept takes away from what it could be.
I think it's because there's one big jump at the beginning, and that like, a big jump takes so much energy. If you think about it, like if you were going for more of like just skipping along, maybe it'd be like a series of really small jumps and then sort of settle to there. Something I'm noticing on this one, and I think you can probably clean a lot of this up just in combing through the graph editor a little bit more. There's some spots where, and you've probably all seen animations like this before. It feels like stop motion, like it's got like hitches in it to where it feels like the motion is kind of jittery. Like stop motion has that like jittery feel because parts of it change inconsistently, right? It gets like this little like twitch that goes through it. And so I can kind of see little parts of that where usually that happens when you have too many keyframes, and maybe not too many, but you have a lot of keyframes and it's not a consistent progression in the graph editor. Like one of them juts up a little too fast, and Like, so maybe going through there and like in those sections, you may just be able to reduce a few keyframes in the curve if it's not needed for fidelity of the motion, right? So you'll kind of see, I think you'll probably see what I'm talking about, like right through there. Like it feels like a little like jittery as it going into that pose, and maybe a little there too. Other notes on this one?
I even like the way he got up. It seems to be like maybe too top heavy just to be able to flip up like that.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about that. I think you were kind of going for like rolling up. Is that what you did? Yeah, it kind of feels like it needs a little bit more anticipation back, maybe even like. So like how he kind of pulls his butt up a little bit and then flips it forward. I think just push that, pull the butt up and flip forward a little bit more to.
I was like struggling with that because I flipped him before.
Yeah.
So I was trying to exaggerate it so you could see what he's doing, but then the board's there, so it was just a struggle.
No, I can see that because probably the control you were moving up was kind of the placement control for the character. Yeah. So, cool. You want to look at yours too?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So.
I was primarily wanting to see like the overall timing because compared to everyone else, that seemed just a little bit too fast to me. But when I was watching it, it seemed fine to me. I don't know if that's compared to everyone else's or if I just got used to it.
I still think it's a little too fast. There's just not enough time for your brain. Like after watching it a couple times, I'm able to comprehend exactly what's happening. But the first time through, it's very overwhelming. That makes sense.
I think it needs some holds on some of those poses. So like I don't think like the flip is too fast. I don't think the slide forward is necessarily too fast. It's the spot, the spots where the character is at rest need to be longer. So like maybe before that slide forward, you need a longer anticipation and then a quick slide forward. And then while he's sitting there looking at the box, you need to hold that a little longer before the box starts moving and he reacts to it. Right? It's like just sort of stretching those parts out and giving us some. Like we think of animation as a rhythm-based art, like playing the drums or playing any sort of rhythm instrument, right? Like you don't want it to feel just like a constant fast rhythm or a constant slow rhythm. You want sort of like a texture to that timing, right? And so it may be like slow, fast, 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 slow, fast, fast, right? And like that's going to get like a more of a appeal to the way things are moving. You'll start to see that more later on, like that consistent timing. It feels like a metronome, and anything you can do to get away from that and get some more interesting timing to it just makes it more appealing to watch. That would be my thinking on that. It's like it's not that any specific motion is too fast. So you need more breathing room.
That's kind of what I was starting to think of, but
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I was on the right track.
I think so. What's anybody else have any thoughts on this one? We'll watch it again. Actually, I really like the hang time and that like first jump and like the way he squishes down. Like I kind of like how that feels. It feels like it needs a bigger anticipation and a little bit more lead and follow on that slide through. So like maybe the bottom half of the body goes first and drags the upper part of the head first, or later.
I was pulling the head first.
Oh, okay. Or whichever, which one of them leading, the other one following. It's kind of hard. It kind of feels like it kind of slides together with the center part just curved, and so it may be that, like there needs to be like a drag behind on it or something. I don't know. We can kind of mess around with that. So. Any other comments on it? Anybody else wanting some feedback on their piece? Here. Okay. What do y'all think? Or did you have specific questions about it?
I feel like trying to make him kind of confused, especially with that frame, with his eyebrow.
So at the beginning. So what do y'all think? Is it reading to you? Like you may have ways of plussing this or things that you would add to it to make it better?
I think like maybe like so at the end you said, or at the beginning, you don't know if it got that pose. I think maybe the eye, she kind of see the object and then like the body reacts. I think maybe like a little more faster. Like you look at it and you just like process it and you're like, oh. So like you don't really see the eye and like necessarily like darts in the nostrils. So I think that would help.
Huh. I think yours has a little bit of like, I love the beginning when the eyes like sort of blinking to wake up. Some of it after that gets a little sluggish, and the timing like gets a little slow in the mode. Right, not like slow, but it's more like it drifts from pose to pose, and it needs a little bit more like faster transition, longer hold. And then I think on some of that you're seeing some jitters in the curve too. Like there's some spots where it feels like if you were to draw a point or track a point on here, it's not moving in a smooth curve. It's sort of got a little hitch in there somewhere or a bobble in it, and you kind of have to track those down one at a time and kind of clean those up. But maybe just one more pass in the curves will probably get a lot of those little hitches, and then sort of making those transitions a little snappier, I think would help too. So, other comments? All right. Anybody else want some feedback on there? All right. Going once. All right. I think that my 2 cents. I think that these came out really good. I keep trying to push. It's weird. Like this would have not even been something you would have touched until like character animation, like 3-5 years ago, or something like that. Little bits at a time, I'm pushing these projects earlier and earlier on you to see if you can handle them, and you can. And I think it's benefiting you that you're getting to the final having animated a full character trying to act or acting, right? What we're going to get into next is a little bit more complicated because you have to deal with a biped, something with 2 legs, right? So first, give yourselves a hand. This looks really good. So. And second, it is 12:39, about 12:40. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back in. Wait, 3:40. Sorry. Well, so let's take a 10-minute break. So about 3:50, come on back, and we're going to go through the pose lecture. And that's another one where you kind of scoot up to the front of the room, and I think you'll enjoy it. So I'll also stop this feedback video and upload it too. So.